My name is Eliza, and if I had to explain my childhood in one image, it would be this. Me, standing in the hallway, clutching a handmade birthday card, while my father wrapped his arms around my cousin Cassidy, laughing like she was his whole world, as I slowly realized he hadn't even remembered it was my birthday. Yeah, that kind of story. I'm the eldest of four. Not that it ever felt like it gave me any power. Being the oldest didn't earn me respect, authority, or even affection. It just made me the default babysitter. The responsible one. The one who was supposed to understand when things didn't go my way. We weren't rich. Far from it. My parents worked hard, or, I should say, my mom did. Dad worked too, but mostly on his own agenda. I grew up believing that maybe love was something you had to earn. That if I worked hard enough, if I was smart enough, kind enough, obedient enough, he'd notice me. He'd love me like he loved her. Her being Cassidy. Our cousin. My dad's niece. Though honestly, you wouldn't know she wasn't his biological daughter if you ever saw the way he looked at her. Cassidy didn't even live with us full time. But she was always around. She had this sparkle about her, blonde curls, dimples, the kind of voice that people say sounds like singing even when she's just talking. She could be rude, messy, selfish, and still, my father would look at her like she walked on water. At first, I didn't know what to make of it. I was 6 when I started noticing the difference. She'd get new dolls for no reason. I had to wait until Christmas, and even then, mine were knockoffs. She got to sit in the front seat, even when it had asked first. If she wanted the last slice of pizza, it was handed over without question. And the most painful part? It wasn't just about things. It was about attention, affection, praise. Cassidy could draw a stick figure and my father would show it off like it belonged in the Louvre. Meanwhile, I spent weeks perfecting a school project, poured my heart into it, and got a nod. Maybe that's nice. I remember one afternoon, I was about 9, I came home holding a perfect report card. I'd worked so hard for it. I was glowing with pride. I walked in, eager to show my dad. But before I could open my mouth, Cassidy burst through the front door crying. She had accidentally spilled nail polish on her favorite shirt. He dropped everything, wrapped her up in his arms, kissed the top of her head, promised he'd buy her a new one that same day. My report card stayed in my backpack for a week. No one ever asked. And then there were birthdays. Mine were quiet. Cake from the discount store, maybe a pair of socks or a used book. Cassidy's? Even though she wasn't even our child, my father went all out, balloons, banners, a full party, gifts I didn't even dare dream about. She's had a hard life, he'd say if anyone questioned it. And maybe she did. I don't know. Her parents split when she was young. Her mom bounced between jobs. But what about us? What about my siblings, who went without school supplies some years because there wasn't enough money? What about Jeremy, who once asked Dad to come to his soccer game only to watch him leave halfway through to pick up Cassidy from a sleepover? What about Ivy, who sat silently in the back seat during car rides while Dad played Cassidy's favorite music and let her choose where we ate? It didn't stop at childhood. As we grew older, the gap widened. Cassidy got a new laptop when she thought about college. I had to share mine with 2 siblings while actually attending night classes. She got braces. I got told, your teeth are fine enough. She got Dad's approval, protection, loyalty. I got crumbs. Mom saw it. Of course she did. But she never said a word that stuck. Just let it go, she'd tell me. He's trying his best. No, Mom. He wasn't. He was choosing. Every single time he chose Cassidy. And somewhere inside me, resentment began to ferment. Quietly. Sharply. Like vinegar in a bottle that was ready to burst. But still. I never imagined there was more to it. I thought it was favoritism. I didn't know it was a secret. A secret that would tear the last shreds of our family apart. By the time I turned 16, I had stopped trying to impress my father. I used to chase his approval like it was oxygen, desperately hoping he'd notice the way I stayed out of trouble, the way I looked after my siblings, the way I carried the emotional weight of a home that was always leaning toward collapse. But by 16, I was tired. So tired. Tired of being second to a girl who didn't even live in our house full time. Tired of pretending it didn't sting when Cassidy's name lit up his phone and he'd excuse himself from dinner to take the call. Tired of the way he'd light up when she walked into her room, like she was the sun and we were shadows. And the worst part? Cassidy knew it. She knew she had power in our house. She wielded it like a crown. She'd breeze in with her salon-fresh hair and expensive perfume, toss her designer handbag onto the couch, and laugh in that high, sweet voice that always made my father melt. Once, she brought over a pair of earrings, sterling silver, still in the box, and handed them to my mother. "I thought these would look so elegant on you," she said with a smile. Mom took them politely, even said thank you. But later that night, I found the earrings shoved deep in the back of the kitchen junk drawer, behind old batteries and expired coupons. She never wore them. She never would. Because those earrings weren't a gift. They were a statement. I'm the favorite. You're the placeholder. Cassidy wasn't cruel, not openly. She never said anything mean to our faces. But her presence was like vinegar poured over fresh wounds. She'd laugh at inside jokes with my father, bring him gourmet coffee, reference conversations the rest of us hadn't been part of. She knew the games he liked to watch, his favorite authors, the restaurants he loved, things I, his own daughter, didn't even know. I started noticing other things, too. Odd glances between Mom and Dad whenever Cassidy left the room. The way Mom would go silent when Cassidy's name was mentioned. Once, I heard them fighting, their voices low and tense behind a closed bedroom door. "She's your responsibility," Mom said, her voice strained. "But that doesn't mean the rest of us disappear." "She's family," Dad hissed back. "What do you want me to do? Pretend she's not?" Responsibility? That word echoed in my head like thunder. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But I knew it was more than just favoritism. It felt heavier. More loaded. Like Cassidy's presence in our lives wasn't just emotional, it was obligatory. As if my dad owed her something. And then, one night, everything shifted. It was a Saturday. I had been invited to a friend's birthday sleepover, something rare, something exciting. I was halfway through packing my bag when Dad walked in. "Cassidy's coming to stay the weekend," he said. I froze. "Okay." And he shrugged. "You'll need to give her your room." I stared at him, unsure if I'd heard correctly. "My room? What about the guest room?" "She doesn't like the pull-out couch. It hurts her back." "I already have plans," I protested. "I was supposed to it." He cut me off. "Don't make this difficult, Eliza. It's just one night." That was the moment I snapped. "Why is it always me?" I shouted. "Why is it always us who have to move around for her? Why do you care more about Cassidy's comfort than your own kids?" He looked at me like I'd slapped him. "This attitude," he said coldly. "This is exactly why she deserves a break from people like you." People like me? I ran out of the house without finishing my bag, without even telling my mom. I went straight to Ava's, my best friend, and cried until my throat burned. I didn't know it then, but that night was the first domino. The first crack that would lead to a fault line splitting wide open. And when the truth came out, it wasn't just about favoritism anymore. It was betrayal at its most personal. Because Cassidy wasn't just the girl who took my room. She was the girl who took my place. I didn't speak to my father for a week after that. It was the longest silence we'd ever had. Not that he noticed. Not that he cared. He spent those days driving Cassidy to college prep seminars, helping her shop for dorm supplies, showing her off to everyone like she was a shining trophy. Meanwhile, I stayed home, nursing my anger in silence, watching my mom fold laundry with that same hollow look in her eyes. One night, I finally broke. It was just the two of us in the kitchen, me and my mother, the TV murmuring in the background, the sound of a ticking clock stretching the silence too thin. "Why does he treat her like that?" I asked, not even expecting an answer. "Like she's his everything?" My mom didn't respond right away. She folded a towel, then another. Her hands were calm. Her jaw was tight. "Eliza," she said slowly, "some things are more complicated than you realize." My heart dropped. That's the thing about quiet people. When they do speak, it matters. "What does that mean?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just walked away, leaving a storm behind in a room that had never felt colder. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words looped in my head like a warning I couldn't decode. So I did something I never thought I would. I took a DNA test. It was supposed to be for fun, one of those ancestry kits my school friend Ava had told me about. She used it to trace her roots and even found a third cousin in Ireland. I told myself that's all I wanted. But deep down, I needed answers. I needed to know if the gnawing suspicion in my gut was paranoia or intuition. I spat in a tube, sealed the package, and mailed it without telling anyone. Weeks passed. I tried to forget about it, focused on school, helped Ivy with homework, avoided Cassidy like a contagious disease. And then one Tuesday morning, as I was walking home from school, I got the notification. "Your results are ready." I remember standing under a streetlight with my phone in my hands, heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. I opened the app, scanned the percentages, ethnicity, family matches, and then I saw it. Close family match, Cassidy Lane, half-sister. Everything stopped. My breath. My thoughts. The sound of cars passing by. The movement of the wind. Half-sister. Not cousin. Not niece. Not family through marriage. Half-sister. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, cold all over, reading the words again and again until they burned into my brain. I was 17, and I had just discovered that my father, the man who had overlooked me, dismissed me, belittled me, had an entire other daughter. With my aunt. Cassidy wasn't just the golden child by favoritism. She was the child he chose in secret, in shame, in silence. And we were the ones who lived in her shadow, not even knowing why. Until now. I stared at that screen for what felt like hours. Cassidy. Half-sister. Same father. Same father. That phrase echoed inside me like a scream underwater. Muffled, but deafening. I walked home in a daze. My hands were trembling. I remember unlocking the door, stepping inside, and hearing the faint sound of my dad's laugh in the living room. Cassidy was there, again, curled up on the couch with her laptop, my dad beside her, showing her something on his phone. Like a perfect little family. And I was the outsider. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I went to my room, shut the door, and slid down to the floor. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might split my chest. That night, I didn't sleep. How could I? Everything, every moment from my childhood, suddenly made a horrifying kind of sense. The favoritism, the endless excuses, the tension between my mother and father that never had a name. All of it wasn't just about Cassidy being the favorite. It was about guilt, about shame, about a secret my father buried and dressed up as affection. He had cheated on my mom, with her sister. And Cassidy, the one who took my room, my spotlight, my place in his heart, was the living, breathing reminder of it. I thought about my mother, about all those years she stayed, the way she bit her tongue, the way she looked at Cassidy with a mix of forced kindness and glassy detachment, how she never joined in on my dad's praises, never smiled when Cassidy smiled. She knew. All this time, she knew. And she stayed. I felt something deep in my chest, a bitter, searing grief, not just for what I'd lost, but for everything I never truly had. The next morning, I confronted her. She was making coffee, the same way she always did, quietly, methodically, as if the world wasn't already on fire. Did Dad cheat on you with Aunt Tessa? I asked. She froze. Didn't turn around. Didn't even blink. Eliza, she began, her voice low. It's true, isn't it? I said. Cassidy isn't my cousin. She's my half-sister. I have the DNA results. Her hands trembled slightly as she set the mug down. And then she finally turned to face me. There were no tears in her eyes. No denials. Just a sadness so deep it looked ancient. Yes, she whispered. He did. The air felt like it collapsed in on itself. I found out when you were 7, she continued. Tessa told me in one of her breakdowns. She said it was a mistake, that it only happened once. But the timing made it clear. Why didn't you leave him? I asked, barely able to get the words out. She looked at me, then past me, as if searching for an answer in a place that didn't exist. Because I had 4 children to raise. Because I didn't have a job. Because I was ashamed. Because every time I tried to leave, he reminded me that he was sorry, that he'd changed, that he'd make things right. Did he? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because Cassidy was still the golden child. The daughter he cherished. The girl he prioritized over all of us, even after everything. I stayed, my mother finally said, because I thought maybe, if I stayed quiet long enough, the wound would close. But it didn't, I said. You just let it bleed through me. She closed her eyes, and for the first time, I saw her not as my mother, but as a woman who'd been trapped, silenced, broken. And still, part of me felt betrayed. She let me think I was crazy all these years. Let me believe I was imagining the favoritism. That I was just jealous, dramatic, ungrateful. But I wasn't. I was right. All along. I walked out of the kitchen without another word. Because I wasn't just angry at my father anymore. I was angry at both of them. I didn't speak to anyone for 2 days. Not my mom. Not my siblings. Not Cassidy, who kept coming over like nothing had changed. And especially not him. But on the 3rd morning, I woke up with one thought. A thought so loud and clear it might as well have been screamed into my bedroom. He doesn't get to walk around like nothing happened. Not anymore. So I planned it. I waited until dinner. One of those forced, awkward gatherings where everyone sat around the table pretending we were a normal family. My dad was there, laughing at his own joke. Cassidy was there too, Of course, like she always was, twirling pasta around her fork while he watched her like she was a painting in a museum. I waited until the plates were cleared and the room was quiet enough to hear the ticking wall clock. Then I dropped the bomb. I took a DNA test. The entire table froze. My siblings looked up. My mom froze mid-reach for her glass. Cassidy blinked. My father's smile faltered, just for a second. And then he asked, too casually, "Oh yeah? What did you find out?" "That my cousin Cassidy," I said, turning to face her, "isn't my cousin." Silence. You could feel the air leave the room, like someone had just sucked all the oxygen out of the house. My dad's expression didn't shift right away. He was trained in the art of denial. But I watched his jaw clench. Just barely. "She's my half-sister," I continued. "Your daughter." Cassidy dropped her fork. I didn't flinch. "I've spent 17 years wondering why you treated her like gold while the rest of us had to fight for scraps," I said, my voice shaking. "And now I know why. She's not just your niece. You cheated on Mom with her mother, and Cassidy is the result." "Eliza," my mom said quietly, "maybe this isn't." "No," I snapped. "This is the time." I turned back to him. "You always made me feel like I wasn't enough. Like I had to earn your attention. And all this time, you were hiding an entire secret life and parading it in front of us like it was normal." My dad's face had gone pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then finally said, "It was a mistake." I laughed, bitter and sharp. "A mistake you made once. Or every single time you chose her over us." Cassidy looked like she wanted to disappear. My siblings just stared at their plates, silent and frozen. "I'm sorry," he finally muttered. "You weren't supposed to find out this way." "That's the problem," I said. "You weren't sorry for doing it. You're sorry for getting caught." He stood up. "Eliza, this is a private matter between adults." "No," I cut him off. "This has never been private. You made it our reality. You built a lie and forced us all to live in it." I stood up too. "For years I begged you to love me, to see me, and you looked right through me, like I was disposable. While she," I nodded at Cassidy, "got everything." Tears were running down her cheeks now. I didn't care, because I had cried enough for everyone at that table. "You don't get to call yourself my father anymore," I whispered, and I walked out. Not just from dinner. From the fantasy he tried to force on us. Because I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the girl who finally saw the truth and said it out loud. After that night, everything changed. The silence in the house was different now. Not cold, just raw. Like the truth had ripped the air open and left it buzzing with everything we had never dared to say. My father stopped speaking to me. No text. No knock on the door. Not even a passing glance. He acted like I had wronged him. Like I was the traitor for exposing the lie he'd wrapped our family in for nearly 2 decades. And Cassidy, she disappeared. Didn't come by anymore. Didn't call. Didn't text my siblings. It was like she vanished into thin air. Or maybe just ran away from the reality that she was no longer the innocent favorite, but the living evidence of a betrayal no one could ignore anymore. Mom walked around like a ghost for the first few days. She moved through the house in silence, folding laundry, cooking meals, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning. I could see the storm inside her, the grief and shame and exhaustion she'd buried for years finally rising to the surface. Then, on the 4th night, she came into my room without knocking. She sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor. "I should have told you," she whispered. I didn't respond. She reached for my hand, something she hadn't done in years. "I didn't stay because I was weak," she said. "I stayed because I thought giving you all a roof and 2 parents, even broken ones, was better than breaking everything apart." "But it wasn't," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know that now." And for the first time, I saw her not as the woman who stayed, but as the woman who survived. A woman who had endured more betrayal than I could imagine and still got up every morning to pack our lunches and sign our homework. Still, survival isn't the same as healing. And I was done surviving. I wanted to heal. That's when I told her, "I'm moving out." Her eyes widened. "Where would you go?" "Ava's older sister has a spare room. She offered it to me. I'm going to take it." It wasn't about punishing her. It was about saving myself. I needed space to breathe, to stop flinching every time I heard Cassidy's name, to stop looking for approval from a man who had spent 17 years making me feel invisible while parading his shame like a prize, to stop bleeding for people who never apologized for cutting me open. My mom cried that night, but she didn't try to stop me. Instead, she hugged me tighter than she had in years and whispered, "I hope you find peace." I left 2 days later with one suitcase, my laptop, and the knowledge that I was finally choosing me. My siblings cried. Ivy hugged me so hard I thought she'd never let go. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "And I want to be brave like you someday." "You already are," I told her. And I meant it. Because this story wasn't just mine. It was ours. A generation raised in the shadow of a lie, finally stepping into the light. Moving out wasn't easy. It never is, even when you know it's the right thing. The first night in Ava's sister's spare room felt like sleeping in a stranger's life. The walls were bare. The air was too still. There were no echoes of siblings laughing down the hallway. No distant clatter of mom's dishes. Just silence, thick and honest. I laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering what came next. But for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into someone else's comfort. I was alone, and somehow, I was finally safe. Ava was a lifeline. She brought me tea without asking. She let me cry when the weight of it all crushed my chest. She didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer, just sat with me, present steady, like a lighthouse in the dark. "You didn't burn it down," she told me one night. "You walked out of a house already on fire." That hit me like a punch to the soul. Because she was right. The damage didn't start with me. I just refused to keep pretending it wasn't there. In the days that followed, something strange happened. I started laughing again. Not the forced kind, not the polite chuckles I'd used to keep peace at the dinner table, but real, chest-deep, ugly snort laughter. Ava and I danced in the kitchen to songs from our childhood. We binge-watched movies. We talked about things I'd buried so deep I forgot they existed, dreams, goals, me. For the first time, I looked at my reflection and didn't see the forgotten daughter. I saw a girl who walked through fire and didn't let it consume her. My mom texted a few times. Just simple messages. "How are you sleeping? Let me know if you need anything. I'm proud of you." I answered when I could. No bitterness. No venom. Just space. And quiet. And a peace that still felt foreign. Then, one evening, Ivy called me from home. She sounded different. "I told Dad I knew the truth," she said. I sat up straighter. "What did he say?" "He said it's complicated," she replied. I told him, "No, it's cruel." And I left the room. A pause. Then she added, "I think he knows he lost us." I exhaled. Not from relief, from recognition. Because it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about reclaiming our voices. Setting boundaries. Walking away from a narrative that never made space for us. A few days later, Cassidy messaged me. The first time since everything fell apart. I didn't know. "I'm sorry." That was it. 5 words. Not nearly enough. But strangely, not nothing either. I didn't reply. Because forgiveness takes time. And she wasn't ready to face the wreckage her existence left behind. Not the way I had to. I wasn't cruel about it. I just chose my peace over her guilt. And honestly, that felt like power. It's been a year since I left that house. 1 whole year since I stood up at that dinner table and refused to let silence steal one more word from my mouth. Since I stopped being the daughter who waited. The girl who begged for crumbs of love from a man who gave his whole heart to someone else's child, only it turns out, she was his child too. But not the only one. He had me. And he lost me. There was no grand confrontation after that night. No sudden change of heart. My father never came to my new place with flowers and apologies. He never sent a letter, never even tried to explain himself. That used to hurt. But not anymore. Because what I've realized is this: closure doesn't always come from the people who broke you. Sometimes, it comes from the moment you stop needing them to. I still see my siblings. Ivy visits on weekends. We go for walks, bake cookies, paint our nails while blasting music too loud. Jeremy writes me emails from college, long ones, full of hope and questions and the kind of honesty we were never allowed to have at home. Even little Gabe, who barely understood what happened, sends me voice notes talking about his video games and asking when I'm coming to visit. I answer every one. Because I promised myself, the pain ends with me. The generational silence. The favoritism. The secrets rotting beneath the floorboards of what we called family, it all ends here. I see my mother too. Not often. But when I do, it's quiet. No shouting. No guilt. Just 2 women learning to rebuild something that was once too fragile to name. She's changed. Not overnight. But I see it in the way she speaks to Ivy now, the gentleness, the intention, the way she looks at her daughters as if she finally sees them. I think she's healing too. As for Cassidy, she hasn't reached out again. And that's fine. I don't hate her. How could I? She didn't ask to be born from betrayal. She didn't choose to be placed on a pedestal while we sank beneath her. But I don't owe her my forgiveness. That's something she'll have to earn, if she ever wants to try. Some nights, I think about the girl I used to be. The one who stayed silent. Who smiled through the pain. Who tried so hard to be good enough. And I want to reach into the past and hold her hand. Tell her she's more than her father's absence. More than a comparison. More than a ghost in her own home. She is whole. She is loud. She is mine. My name is Eliza. And I am not invisible. Not anymore.